Good afternoon and welcome back to the SPL desk. My name is F. His name is Anatoly, and we're going to get into our second match of the day. It'll be Team Dignitas as they push forward, trying to secure their trip to DreamHack against Torpedo Gaming.
We saw the last set working wonderfully for Hungry for More. They were tied with Dignitas at 10 and 10, and now Hungry for More are above them. Dignitas has to respond into this set, especially considering it's against Cringe Crew, who's a little bit struggling this season.
Yeah, Cringe Crew has had some issues. They started off very strong, and then as the season has progressed, they start to look a little bit, they've been faltering. Quite a different story for the guys on Team Dignitas, though. They got their Panthera games out of the way right before the bye week, and then just sort of kept on going. This team has looked very strong, whether it's from interesting strategies from Suntouch or otherwise.
And those interesting strategies, we'll see how they'll transition it. If they're going to keep rolling with it, they've exposed it quite a bit, and now a lot of teams have seen it, so we'll see if they respond.
Yeah, there's been a changeover on Torpedo. For a number of weeks, we've seen Moex in the short lane, and then Gamehunter in the Hunter position. And this has worked out because, as you noted, Gamehunter really likes to split push.
He likes the late game carry potential that he'll just farm the whole game, basically, come in with the late game hyper burst items. He'll just do so much damage to your team if you're not ready for it. But when he's in a position where he has to rotate earlier on, that's where he's not in his comfort zone necessarily.
Right.
And we've seen that in one set earlier on where he struggled.
And when that happens, Gamehunter winds up sort of by himself in the lane, trying to go ahead and push forward. But for Smite, it's all about the team play, and we'll see that as we get into picks and bans for game number 1, Torpedo versus Dignitas. Jeffrey on top of him, and the chase down. ShadowNightmare finds the kill!
Absolutely brilliant.
There's the Athena ult. Real ult should help secure this unless Athena actually... The ult lands just in time for Suntouch to intercept. Go Fury, Rens is here. Let's watch him. Dignitas get the goal! Fury up that engagement.
So we've got our first pick going over to Torpedo, and we'll see which way they elect. How do they normally spend their first pick?
It's usually on a Chronos pick. Whenever it's available, you can flex in between the middle, especially onto Gamehunter that's now into the Hunter position. You can't really go wrong in that regard. Dignitas, we'll see if they respond. Actually, Torpedo is going to be the ones that's going to ban it right off the bat.
Dignitas also have a decent Chronos. Rens has been playing a number of gods, and Chronos has walked into there. But really, it's about the Anhur. So it's a curious Chronos ban, honestly. Very interesting as far as that's concerned. Torpedo must know something about ShadowNightmare's plans that we don't.
Speaking of the Anhur, Ren's very comfortable playing aggressively every now and then on the Anhur. We'll see if Torpedo responds with that.
Honestly, that I would like to see an Anhur ban or first pick out of Torpedo, just because Rens has been sort of the Achilles heel for a lot of these Team Dignitas games, and with him on her, it's looked like a completely different player, and he's been able to impact and turn Dignitas into into a bigger monster than they already were.
Naja off the table away from FrostiaK. Meanwhile, Korinyo not going to be able to play the Raijin. He's been having a few games pretty successful with the Raijin, doing a lot of damage.
Yeah. A lot of that burst mage style works out for Korinyo. We'll see if he goes in the same direction here. But the first pick from Torpedo.
It's a lot of options available to them, whether it's the Global Presence, the Thor, the Athena. They're going to be a solid another flex pick opportunity. It's one strategy you can do between the mid lane and the Hunter position.
Interesting. We've seen Korinyo play this a couple of times.
It could be good as well, depending on what jungler you go. If you can lock somebody down in one position, getting bursted by Soul late game is not fun to deal with.
That's very true. Soul has been a little bit underwhelming, I think. Going back to LAN last year, players were really hyped about Soul, and she's been okay, but just okay.
She isn't able to provide you with the CC that you need for the rest of the mid laners that they could do. So you're more relying on the rest of your team to set you up for the CC, whereas you provide that late game, the mid to late game damage out of the Soul.
So Torpedo will be coupling Soul with a decent amount of crowd control if all things go well. Whereas Team Dignitas, they're going to take Nemesis as well. Nemesis, what a story, man. I mean, Nemesis was a character that was picked up, and despite never winning, it took about 6 or 7 games before Nemesis actually found a win over on the side of Europe, but people kept picking her nonetheless. And now she's winning, and people are still picking her.
Captain Sobek has been making Nemesis work. We'll
Yes.
see if NinjaBobat is able to do, FrostiaK is able to do the same on the Nemesis pick, where we have the Zeus paired up for ShadowNightmare. It's going to be a lot of damage. If there's any Divine Judgment from the Nemesis, going to be followed up with a lot of damage from the Zeus.
Exactly. It doesn't matter really who's the target of Zeus. If Nemesis Ultimate is going to combine there, as she'll strip away a lot of the protections, And Thor and Sobek will have a lot of those protections. So there's that crowd control that we wanted to see coupled alongside the Soul for Torpedo. Second round bans are out. Team Dignitas will focus a little bit spread out. Odin on the Ho Yi, and same thing with Torpedo, a single warrior and a single hunter.
I like the Odin ban in this situation. Dignitas have gods that they can't get out of the Odin cage as well. They know their own counter and they're playing around it. Gonna pick up aggressive Anhur for iRens. We'll see how he handles the Sobek in the dueling as well.
The Anhur has worked out so well for iRens the past couple of weeks. Rens has, so it's actually funny. Rens has been, like I said, a little bit of an issue for Team Dignitas, at least in consistency. But all the pros have always spoken about Rens' incredible ability and how it's showcased in scrims specifically. We're actually finally getting a taste of that. We see it at LAN occasionally. We're getting a taste of that. But hey, Rens capitalized the I in his name in the last couple of weeks.
Is there somebody else that capitalizes letters in their name?
I don't know. Maybe that's just a change because he was always lowercase I, capital R-E-N-S. Now he's the big man with the big capital. Now he's got something to say.
The big man Xbalanque making his presence known, coupled with the Thor ultimate, it's going to provide a lot of sneak attacks available for Torpedo. Picking up Habwa as well. Lastly, we haven't seen Habwa in quite a while. Actually, never in this season.
Yeah, this is a spicy pick. Habwa is an extreme. I mean, to say burst mage, you're putting it lightly, man. It looks like he's going to wind up in the solo lane. Although things can shift around, I do expect it in the solo lane. Piloted by Moex, that's a little bit interesting. What does Habwa bring?
So you're forcing the warrior that you're against to build magic defense earlier on, which is going to allow your Thor and your Hunter to burst them down a lot easier in the mid to late stages of the game.
Habwa looking for some damage on Torpedo. Will it be enough to alter Team Dignitas' heavy aggression that we've seen the past couple of weeks? Let's find out.
Good purification from Zeus. Snipe connected from Korinyo to confirm it. Bobat is dead. He's going to use purification while in the air. Big shield from Murrdurr keeps him alive. Though, and a cataclysm too. Great play from Murrdurr. Big ultimate onto Jungle, who gets knocked up as well. Evaporated. Drums of Warcraft and NinjaBobat actually to find that one.
Here's that Habwa we were talking about. Got the old Hebrew skin. Fun fact, last year when we didn't allow skins in the SPL, this was actually one of the skins allowed. Hebrew has a smaller model, so you can see the water spout targeter a little bit better.
And the voice pack is always fun to play as well. If you ever just spam all his emotes, such a treat.
Gnarly.
Gnarly, brah. But anyway, the Habwa right here in this situation with the Vamp Shroud and the Purple Pot, this is going to be very difficult for Dignitas to respond early on. If the Habwa gets the laning phase with blue buff, they're going to clear speed buff very quickly as well as the blue. They're going to get to lane first as well.
Now, normally when we see a mage go in the solo lane, one of the big things as we transitioned to Season 1 to Season 2, and it was no mages allowed, was because you're going to get your blue buff invaded all the time. What makes Habwa a little bit better in that situation?
It doesn't necessarily make him better or worse. Before, it used to be hogs that used to deal with him, or you would have gods that would slow a lot or keep you in place with a curse. And now with the new relic system in this Season 3, it makes it a little easier to buy defensive relics such as Purification to get away from that early slow or root.
So again, this past week and the week beforehand, we've seen a number of solo laners not going the teleport. That is almost required. What's bringing solo laners away from TP?
So if you don't buy teleport, you're trying to dictate the pace of the laning phase. You want the enemy solo laner to stay in your laning phase, and you want to position yourself to bully the enemy so you have the advantage. And if they don't have teleport, then it's always going to be a 4v4, and you're winning the 1v1 continuously.
Now, normally we've seen the Wrath pick up, and you can understand that. I won't have to back, but I'll always have my blue buff. I can guarantee that. Purification's a little bit more defensive. I mean, how does Moex ensure that he's not going to get pushed out of lane?
All he has to do is just position himself to consistently poke out TheDarkDodo and avoid any ganks coming out of FrostiaK. He has the Purification to get away from the slow as well. ShadowNightmare was able to get the right side mid harpies earlier on, sitting at level 3 currently.
And everybody else in the middle lane, level 2. Soul level 2 right now. So only 2 abilities there. And we can see Moex having some trouble clearing that wave this early on. That should change in a couple of levels as Dignitas picks up the left side harps.
So just like that, Moex is able to use this burst damage to his advantage. He has no mana potions, doesn't need it because he has the blue buff. He has the purple pot with the Vamp Shroud to provide a lot of magical power to constantly poke out TheDarkDodo. He can't even come close to the wave right now to do anything without getting poked out in return.
Yeah, there's that knockup into the water hands. A lot of damage coming out from the Habwa. And that's really, I mean, so that's all Habwa does. You mentioned before that Moex has to make sure he doesn't go ahead and get ganked. That's easier said than done. He doesn't really, we have seen a little bit buff as far as the movement speed on the water carpet, but it's still just tough if Moex gets caught out in the middle of that lane.
And with that, FrostiaK is making a rotation, recognizing how aggressive Moex is playing. The carpet is down, so now he's not going to be immune for the slow. Moex spots it out, however.
Yeah, I just saw, was it the body language of the Ravana?
A little bit. He also didn't see the positioning of the Nemesis throughout the minimap, so he's just going to respect that MIA call, and that's something that you always have to do. Even if you have an advantage in the solo lane and you're trying to bait out the rotation, you still want to be careful.
Now level 5, Moex on this Habwa can really start to look for the kill onto TheDarkDodo.
Moex was able to get a solo wave because of the rotation from FrostiaK, and that's a small advantage in itself. The fact that now TheDarkDodo had to share a wave means Moex is level 5 and could keep poking on and being aggressive. Now he's going to hit level 6 first, level 7, 8, and 9 later on.
Bobat following FrostiaK into the jungle. FrostiaK still not level 5, but those elementals will do the deed. And a double dash out of Nemesis puts her out of dodge.
And Korinyo sitting at level 4 currently. ShadowNightmare was able to get the right and the left side mid-harpies so far. Torpedo is looking a little bit shaky with ShadowNightmare at level 6 currently to Korinyo's level 4.
Nemesis flanking from the right side, wanting Torpedo to push up, but it's not going to happen. Purification used on ShadowNightmare as he gets hit by the pluck. There's a Zeus ult, very well placed, and ShadowNightmare picks up first blood onto Murrdurr. Bobat's in the sky, looking for some more, but won't find the hit onto ShadowNightmare, so no stun. And the damage going the opposite way. Dignitas off to a tear. FrostiaK dash in, dash out. But Korinyo does find the answer against the opposing mid laner.
ShadowNightmare was doing such a good job maneuvering himself around the solo ultimate, juking the Thor ultimate in the process as well, buying enough time. And it was a beautiful patience from FrostiaK around the corner, expecting Murrdurr to use his pluck. And once he plucked, boom, here comes Divine Judgment, and that was an easy kill.
A lot of times we see the Sobek, and one of the #1 rules about Sobek is to not walk into that tower range of the pluck because it's you know it's going to come. And so we saw that happen in real time, and I sit there going, man, Shadow, you burned your purification. That didn't have to happen, but that was the plan the whole time.
It was the plan the whole time. Unfortunately, he didn't need to use the purification anyway because he had the Geb shield coming around the corner. A little bit of miscommunication there. Now Dignitas responding with those 2 kills by taking the speed buff away from Torpedo and the right side mid harpies. Good things for Dignitas.
Exactly. It's always, you never want to just win the fight. You want to find something after it. Good things come in 2s or 3s in Smite. The team fight is just the first part of the sentence. Then you got to finish it up with some extra objectives. And so the jungle will be exactly where Dignitas goes ahead and focuses. Korinyo does have a kill to his name, though, so that puts him about 400 gold down from the Zeus, and Zeus picked up the first blood. How much of a situation is this for Sol, or is she relatively fine?
Well, right now, Sol's sitting at level 7. She was behind a little bit earlier on. She was level 4, just hitting level 5 when the Zeus was level 6. And because of that factor, she didn't have the burst. She wasn't able to contest the Zeus on the right side mid-harpies. She had to concede the left side mid-harpies as well, and that's what gave ShadowNightmare that initial advantage.
And ShadowNightmare certainly used it, as we saw, going ahead and picking up that first blood. Fantastic, just his maneuvering around all of those options that were coming out from the opposition, and then dropping that Zeus ult in the perfect spot. It was the perfect spot, I mean, largely because the enemy just couldn't run anywhere without walking through it.
Sobek had nowhere to go. His pluck was already down. He covered basically half of the tower radius. The only safety option he had was to go around side the mid harpies, and there was no way he could do that because he would get instantly chased down.
3v3 one more time in the mid lane. Torpedo. Korinyo will go ahead and back to base for the first time in this game. Eager to see if he goes into the boots first, and he won't. Immediately stacking up that Doom Orb. So Korinyo feeling relatively safe. Moex, on the other hand, certainly not. Half HP thanks to the Ravana.
And this is where the Ravana will start to take over. As long as he's going to face tank Moex, and you have FrostiaK around the corner, going to force out the purification for the slow as well. Was a little bit misguided because the carpet provides you that slow immunity anyway.
That's something that the players have to get used to, I suppose. Moex in that short lane, though, he's newer to the solo lane role. So the question I want to ask, because we saw Snoopy transition over the solo lane role, have some struggles, find its footing, and then play something odd, the Bakasura, and that didn't work out for him. Moex seems to have finally gotten his feet out from underneath him, playing on the Hercules and such. How does this Hebo pick really affect him?
He hasn't really been playing mages into the hunter position, so this is a little different from what we're seeing out of Moex. He's normally playing the warriors in the solo lane. Now transitioning into Habwa makes sense based on the strategy they were going on, but now it seems like he's a little bit shaky with the way he handled that last gank.
So as throughout the game, we got to take a look at how the Habwa winds up playing, specifically in the late mid game and the late game, because that's really, I mean, Habwa just becomes the man with 4 ultimates late game.
They're going for burst Torpedo. You have the late game Habwa, you have the late game SPL as well, and the late game Soul. So that's the strategy that Torpedo is implementing. They're giving up the frontline warrior coming out of Moex. They're content with letting him sit there 1v1, get him into a high level, because whenever you're in the soul lane, you're going to naturally scale higher than the rest of your teammates, and having Habwa in the soul lane higher level is really good.
We're going to see NinjaBobat really shift over to that more frontline warrior type feel on the Thor, most likely as the game gets later and later. Moex caught out one more time. There's sprint, and it looks like everybody wants to get aggressive, but a single knockup is all we're going to have out of Moex. Is on the left side, everybody's chasing Korinyo, and up in the air goes Bobat, looking for the landing down, but ShadowNightmare's already done the deed. 1 kill already on the side of Team Dignitas. Moex is forced out. TheDarkDodo still going ham, and there's a couple of hits, and the basic will confirm the kill on a Moex, who doesn't really do anything in the team fight. FrostiaK, on the other hand, chops down the mid laner. He'll trade his life as Bobat makes the rotation, but that's 3 kills for just the single dead Nemesis.
That was a really good trade coming out of Dignitas, establishing themselves such a lead. They're even going to try out the Gold Fury. ShadowNightmare is a little bit low. SPL had to back. Thor ultimate is not available for NinjaBobat.
Doesn't matter.
But he is rotating from behind. We'll see if he's able to clean anybody up after the secure.
And it's the quick exit that Dignitas go ahead and employ, which really makes that exciting. Now, like you said, the biggest deal for that situation with Torpedo is that, sure, everybody died, but NinjaBobat's ultimate was down. So he wasn't able to go ahead, dunk in, and get a couple of kills like we frequently see Thor do against these early Gold Fury attempts.
And with that, Dignitas established a very comfortable lead, sitting at 3,000 gold, 4,000 experience currently, and that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, yes, that is very much so a big deal. With 3,000 gold in the lead, that's going to go ahead and allow Ravana to pick up one of the more interesting items.
The Oni Hunter's Garb right now is a very cost-efficient magical defense item in the soul lane when you're dealing, especially with an aggressive Habwa. Having the crowd control reduction is also a nice little bonus touch when you're dealing with a Thor that could potentially gank you, allowing you to spam your abilities more as Ravana's cooldowns are relatively short is the nice luxury as well. Yeah,
this is a great choice coming out, and really, you hit the nail on the head when you said it was efficient. The efficiency of this item is really what impresses me. It's just every bit of gold is used. It's not as expensive as some of the other options that we might see, like Genji's, etc. So you're able to just pick this up, second item, and get off to a quick start. Would you call this the magical breastplate?
It is, to an extent. Ren's going to just use a purification against Murrdurr. So the Oni Hunter Garb is very efficient. Breastplate is also very efficient physical defense-wise. And I would say in this situation, when you were behind earlier on, now this is the power spike that you need to flip the matchup completely on its head. And now Moex is going to be forced to sit under his tower. Because of the purple pot, he didn't get any advantage off of it. So now technically, he's behind. Not only is he down 800 gold, he's technically down 1250.
Right, that lost power just not going to affect him. You know, I'll take that back. Without the CDR, I think Oni Hunter's Guard probably more like the magical Nimian line, when you're just buying it to get rid of all the physical damage.
That's true. It does provide you a lot of magical defense also with the aura, as long as you're not getting consistently hit. TheDarkDodo looking to play very aggressive under the tower, forcing the Habwa ultimate.
And he's going to, if he plays his card right here, yeah, one more shot should do it. And a couple of hits, there it is. The Prana Assault coming out from TheDarkDodo, finding the kill onto Moex. And this is one of the big downsides to Habwa. We spoke at length for the first 10 minutes of the game about how strong the Habwa is, how he's able to delete you very quickly. A single knockup is all you need sometimes. But the downside is he's extremely susceptible to death.
I thought we were going to have a repeat performance. Before it was the soul laner versus soul laner on the tower. This time it would be the jungler versus jungler. Not going to find it. However, the jungler is going to get zoned out from Torpedo. Not able to defend their tier 1 solo tower, going down at the 10.5 minute mark.
Yeah, FrostiaK's done a great job on this Nemesis, just literally chasing people down, not being afraid to deploy the ultimate early on, and then just find the chase down kill, whether you're forcing relics or forcing people to leave so you get the tower, and it's putting him and his team in a great position to go ahead and take some gold off of the board. And with that tier 1 tower in the short lane, Solo will be the first tower that we see go down. Dignitas couple that with an earlier Gold Fury, and they're leading by about 4,000 gold.
With that, TheDarkDodo has a 3-level advantage. Very comfortable right now to rotate into the mid lane, just taking some farm away from ShadowNightmare, and he's going to try to make a play aggressively in the dual lane. Wants to shut down Gamehunter potentially.
Level 12 and level 10 on the two players going for these left Harpies, so the level 11 mid laner in his jungle really can't contest too hard. Honestly, less about the levels there, just more about the amount of players available, as Dignitas has made the rotation towards the mid lane holistically, and there's about 4 separate players here.
Speed buff is available. TheDarkDodo sees it around the corner. Suntouch is in position as well. ShadowNightmare and FrostiaK catching Murrdurr during the dash.
Bobat's up in the air. ShadowNightmare starts it off with 1 kill. Bobat trying to find a target. He lands right on Suntouch. 25% HP already. Korinyo combines and takes him out. 2 left on the backside. Korinyo will find his way out thanks to the Spirit Ball, and Moex going to be fine playing defense, but ShadowNightmare one more time drops the punch onto NinjaBobat. 8 kills in total for Team Dignitas.
Forcing the purification out of Moex as well. TheDarkDodo playing very beautifully, zoning out 2 members as the rest of Dignitas is able to take the speed buff away from Torpedo. Now they're going to put pressure onto the tier 1 mid tower as well, extending their lead even further. Gamehunter does rotate over. Going to try to do something as the initiation happens.
And this is exactly what you want your solo laner to do. TheDarkDodo dives on the backside, forcing everything out from Moex, including the life itself. ShadowNightmare one more time with a perfect placement of the ultimate, gets credit for the kill. And Team Dignitas looking exactly as hot as they have been described for the past couple of weeks.
A little bit different style than we're used to seeing them in the past week, with the aggressive support rotation into the jungle, playing a little bit more standard now. They're utilizing the aggressive Ravana and Nemesis to their advantage, utilizing some invades as well.
What I'm loving here is that last week and the week before, we saw a lot of Suntouch being aggressive with the Wrath and cheeky strategies that people were calling cheesy or gimmicky or whatnot. And Dignitas come out the next week and they say, hey, look, we can play regular old-fashioned Smite as well. I'm going to play Geb, one of the most typical supports out there, right? A little bit of crowd control, some support for his teammates, and we'll let ShadowNightmare carry the game like we did in the first half of the season.
And the way he's building this Geb as well, it's very utility style, going for full CDR. He wants to spam as many shields as possible, allowing FrostiaK to play very aggressive, as well as TheDarkDodo. And as long as Suntouch is in the back line, going to make sure he uses his Cataclysm, using the knockup as well, then that's all they really need coming out of him, just consistently spamming those abilities.
Exactly. They have FrostiaK and Dodo really doing the frontline dirty work as far as pushing people out, just jumping in the backside, and initiating the fights, honestly. It's TheDarkDodo jumping in the middle of everything. Suntouch is able to build a little bit less intense for himself and just provide that help for his teammates. Here we see another Gold Fury attempt, but it will quickly be turned into a secure. As it falls already, Dignitas secure another bunch of gold, already sitting about 7 grand up.
And this is huge. It's at the 14-minute mark. Murrdurr in a position where he's forced to sprint away as Gamehunter uses Darkest of Nights.
There's a hit from NinjaBobat and the return from FrostiaK, ultimate on top of the Thor, and from a distance, Renz finds the shots. That's the accuracy that Dignitas need as they get their 10th kill of the contest.
So right now they have a power play 5v4 as we do have a rotation from Anhur onto the dueling, trying to stop the split push from Gamehunter. Gamehunter sitting at level 15 right now, highest level of his team, still doing what Gamehunter does best, is just farming it up and waiting for that right timing.
Shadow finds another strong ultimate. Korinyo will go ahead and avoid it with the immunity ball, and that'll put the soul safe. Murrdurr, on the other hand, not so safe. FrostiaK comes from around the side. Ultimate doesn't matter. Couple of basics and the slap make it secured. FrostiaK on the top side of that one versus Murrdurr, and they're still pushing down the mid lane. ShadowNightmare just takes Moex out from underneath them, and the mid tower falls down. That's another 500 gold going the way of Dig.
ShadowNightmare too far ahead right now, sitting at level 15 with red buff, able to take out the Habwa, sitting at level 12 right now, not having any health as well, with Warlock Sash to his arsenal, so he's going to instantly drop if he ever gets chain lightninged.
ShadowNightmare right there. He has been one of the top performers, not just in this game, but also for this team, for this squad, frankly, in Europe. He's just looked as like one of the stronger players. Dignitas early on in the season. ShadowNightmare has always really been the cornerstone for this team.
And with that, Dignitas feeling themselves really heavily, trying to steal the red buff away, forcing a sprint on top of themselves just to bully the rest of Torpedo away from their own red buff.
Murrdurr's going to go ahead and get vision control as Dignitas ward is taken out thanks to the sentry. So Murrdurr winds up with an extra 50 gold in his pocket.
And now iRens with the red buff is going to be looking to play aggressive as he goes back to the wave in the dual lane. They want to get this last remaining tier 1 tower is Dignitas. They already got the solo lane around the 10-minute mark. They got the mid tower around the 14-minute mark. And now they're going to look to put pressure on the duo tower.
Going back to ShadowNightmare on Dignitas. This guy, so Season 3 has been lauded as a season for hunters, right, where hunters were empowered, and we've seen a lot of hunters like Zapman come back into the spotlight. And Season 2 was a little bit less intense about hunters. And Season 3, a lot of it has gone away from the mid lane. It's all been talked about the jungle and the hunter, especially with the speed buff coming back. ShadowNightmare and Dignitas have always really sat around this potent, powerful mid laner. What type of play does ShadowNightmare bring that makes it a little bit different and makes them sort of shrug off the hunter-jungler strength meta?
The thing that he does is he leans on his jungler setup every single time. The way FrostiaK and ShadowNightmare play together is they set up into the kill. iRens just trying to find a kill, not able to find it on the tier 1 tower. But going back off that point, ShadowNightmare follows up off of FrostiaK's setup.
Right.
And before they used to play, like, let's say, Kukulkan a lot in the mid lane, whereas the hunters would be playing the hyper-aggressive burst gods, whereas iRens would play a different style and be more farm-oriented. ShadowNightmare now playing more aggressive.
And that's really been benefiting Dignitas. You can see whether it's the aggression on the Suntouch with the Wrath, or the aggression in mid lane with the Zeus, or iRens coming out with the Anhur, jumping on opponents and with a beautiful ultimate earlier on. There's just always aggression with Team Dignitas, and they're finding their wins off of stuff like this. Singly diving the tower is TheDarkDodo. He's going to lose a little bit of HP, really not that big of a deal for the Ravana player.
And he's going to build up his passive, getting some shields, going to heal off with the root as well. Level 18 currently compared to Howball's level 13. He's able to make these aggressive plays under the tier 2 tower, and there's nothing that Torpedo can realistically do about it. Even 2v1 and the tier 2 tower can't hold off TheDarkDodo.
One of the downsides to Hobwa is he's one of these characters similar to a Loki, where if you're behind, you actually don't do anything. Mid lane tower being pushed, tier 2, Dignitas get it down to about half HP. Torpedo playing decent defense. FrostiaK gets poked out by the enemy jungler, but 3 levels his senior. FrostiaK just turns right on around while the rest of his team takes out the tier 2.
Tier 2 going into the favor of Dignitas, establishing almost a 10,000 gold lead at the 18-minute mark. This is really impressive out of them. And the way that FrostiaK was playing the Nemesis, patiently waiting on the side, is the same way Captain Twig plays the Nemesis, waiting for that right opportunity with the Nemesis towards the mid-game. Aggression from Dignitas.
And there's the initiation coming out from Suntouch as TheDarkDodo piles onto Moex. Good tail whip will separate the solo laner from the rest of the team.
Beautiful tectonic rift coming out of NinjaBobat, not allowing iRens and FrostiaK to follow up off of the aggression.
Literally closing the door for the rest of Team Dignitas off of the right side flank. Very good play from NinjaBobat.
And that's the way you need to play Thor, whether you're ahead or behind. You have to use the tectonic rift to your advantage, whether you're cutting somebody off from escaping or allowing the rest of your team to escape as a result.
Gold Fury spawning here. Dignitas going to look directly at it. Went to the 11,000 gold lead. No reason for Dignitas to even think twice about this. If Torpedo show up, they're going to kill whoever shows their faces. And Torpedo certainly won't. And Dignitas push their lead to 12,000.
Yeah, NinjaBobat's going to have to use his ultimate just to escape, and he's barely able. If there was a few Zeus charges on him, 2 or 3, then that was definitely going to be a dead Thor.
Without that Xbalanque ultimate from Gamehunter, much different situation. Gamehunter now leading the race against the single Anhur. Sanctuary used. iRens doesn't want to turn around. Couple more basics will seal the deal, and the branching bola does. Gamehunter comes up on top from iRens with iRens not even thinking about fighting back. Ultimate used onto Gamehunter from the jungler. FrostiaK, a couple more basics, but here's the wave. What a great play from FrostiaK. Still trying to find it, dashing forward, but Sunny showing up should be the end of this one.
It should be the end of this one. The health pool is high enough for FrostiaK to survive. Suntouch just sitting around there, being a spectator, just threw out the shields like, all right, FrostiaK, you can get this one. iRens bit off a little bit more than he could chew in that earlier engagement. You still have to respect the late game damage coming out of the Xbalanque, even if you are 1 level ahead.
Yeah, we just didn't even see the turnaround from iRens and FrostiaK. I liked the play he made when the minions came. Gamehunter was trying to dance in between, and FrostiaK just took a step back and said, okay, I'm going to wait for my support. That's the type of patience that you were talking about, not even specific to the Nemesis, just understanding that sometimes the tables will turn and you're not in as good a spot, so you got to wait for assistance.
Tables have turned on iRens as he died early in the 1v1. Given a stack also to Gamehunter, it could be something that Torpedo might need in the next step moving forward. They are behind a lot of gold, but if they can isolate iRens again in that situation and they find another pick, then that could stall them out a little bit longer and defend a little bit better.
Which is exactly what Torpedo need to do. as the opposition have really solidified their lead here. Dignitas up by about 13k. Moek's going to get smoked out just a little bit by the Zeus. More importantly, he's just pushed into the lane. 4 deaths and 0 return kills coming out on the Habwa. Like I was saying, similar to some of the other characters in the game, Hebo has one single job, and it's to do damage, it's to delete you, and when you're sitting 0, 4, and 1, you just don't have the gold, the items, or the capability to do what you're set out to do on this character.
Especially when you're 6 levels behind your opposition, you can't even come close.
Yeah.
Your opposition is zoning out the rest of your team with Gamehunter split pushing. Fire Giant uncontested going into the favor of Dignitas as Murrdurr's forced to dash away.
Torpedo will pick up their second tower of the game over there, or their first tower of the game, excuse me. Gamehunter split pushing on the left side. Still, good push for the tier 2, as Dignitas going to do the same with their Fire Giant. That's exactly what we'll see. The Jungle Cat pushing, but Dignitas have 5 members with a Fire Giant buff on the tier 2. They'll take it at the same time as Gamehunter, honestly, and it's a race. Phoenix versus Phoenix. One player goes ahead and backs from Team Dignitas. It'll be the Geb. And honestly, it looks like it's enough to stop Gamehunter. Quite a different story for Torpedo on the right side. Ren's just following the ultimate into the ether as the Phoenix goes ahead and falls down. The first Phoenix of the game goes to Team Dignitas, 21:40 on the clock.
I like what Torpedo did. They split their forces into the mid lane as well, getting the tier 1 and the tier 2. Unfortunately for Torpedo, Gamehunter was not able to get that left side Phoenix. However, he helped the tier 2 siege as well. So gold-wise, it's cutting the lead a little bit. So they still have to defend the Phoenix on the right-hand side from the fire waves as it respawns. But this puts Torpedo in a decent spot. They would have been behind way more gold if they didn't do that.
Yeah, don't forget that the combination of the tier 1 and the tier 2 tower are going to net your team a 2,000 gold boon. So that'll help get rid of some of the wounds that Dignitas have been putting onto Torpedo.
And with that, looks like Dignitas is going to try to get the towers on the dual lane side. And if they get that Phoenix, it's going to be even more difficult for Torpedo to defend the Fire Giant that will respawn, because now you have the Fire Wave on the opposite side of the map. You don't really have the best way to come back to the Fire Giant to defend it.
No plan from Torpedo to defend the tier 1 tower. Looks like the same will be held for the tier 2 over there on the left side. We see Dodo and Moex dancing together on the right side. TheDarkDodo trying to do what he can to push these fire minions deeper and deeper into the enemy base. There's a tier 2 tower, and like I said, Torpedo likely will not be putting their best effort to defend this one, rather defend under the Phoenix.
Tier 2 tower does go down. Dignitas not content with just the tier 2. They want all the Phoenixes remaining, and that's exactly what they're going to do with a 5-man siege. It's going to be very difficult. They have such a good experience lead. ShadowNightmare level 19. DarkDodo has been level 20 for so long.
There's a pluck onto Renz. He gets thrown, but the Phoenix will stop him, and Renz actually just turns around and takes out Murrdurr. ShadowNightmare being aggressed on by Torpedo, but a strong Sanctuary keeps him alive for long enough to drop the ultimate. 10 HP left on the Mage, and he's going to find a way out, unlike Moex, where Renz takes him out again. 2 deaths on the side of Torpedo. Everybody alive for Dignitas, although ShadowNightmare very, very dire situation.
Torpedo tried to all-in the Zeus in the situation with a Xbalanque Thor ultimate, not able to find the kill as
Nice
the Sanctuary bought enough time for him to survive. The Xbalanque hits were not enough to get the kill as well. Now Dignitas able to get all 3 Phoenixes so far, 24 minutes into the game. They're going to retreat, spend all of the gold in hand, going to get the Fire Giant as well. Looking at the gold in hand on the left-hand side. The iRens sitting at 2850, already having the Blood Shoryuken of Doom at his disposal. Going to look to get the Deathbringer as well, more than likely.
Smart play from Dignitas to go ahead and back here. Torpedo couldn't defend their Phoenixes, but certainly dished out a bunch of damage to those trying to do so. ShadowNightmare found himself with a hair of HP and also a sliver of HP on the Hunter as well. So the final push really couldn't be made by Dignitas in there, despite finding those 2 kills on the left side. I like the patience. I like the decision to go ahead and back to base.
And more than likely, Dignitas is not going to stall out this game similar to the last set where Hungry for More had the advantage. With this kind of a lead that Dignitas established themselves and the item advantage, there's no way that this game is going to last more than 40 minutes.
Absolutely not. And also a much different situation. And one of the harder things for teams to learn is how to close out the games. When you scrim, when you play, you're guaranteed the early game. You're almost guaranteed the mid game as long as nobody hits F6 at 14:14 on the clock. So as long as that's not the case, you're going to go ahead and see, you're not going to see the late game every single time you play. So a team like Hungry for More that's just recently turned up, they're having a little bit of trouble closing these games. Whereas Dignitas, they've had a lot more practice.
We're talking about practice right now, and as Dignitas, they've had their practice, and now it's time for the game. and they're able to close it out, hopefully, within the next couple of minutes before the Fire Giant spawns.
Murrdurr goes ahead and dashes away. There's the ultimate from Gamehunter as he's trying to use it defensively. Moex just surrounded. Ren's trying to do what he can, and Suntouch saves the life again of the Hunter. Excellent shield to protect the Hunter Rens from the opposition. Gamehunter's damage, and that saves the life one more time. 2 players dead on Torpedo. Now Dignitas, they're not as unhealthy as they were last time. Rens is in the yellow, but everybody clean and clear. Rens is going to find some lifesteal off of the wave on the right side, and Dignitas poised to make their final push.
Thor does land, not able to connect onto Rens, forces the purification. They should be able to find a pick onto him as his hammer is down, but they're in the Titan room. There is going to be a lot of damage with the chain lightning from ShadowNightmare. This first game is going to Dignitas.
5K on the Titan, scratch that. It's going to be 0. Excellently placed. Zeus ultimate can keep Torpedo at bay, but now Torpedo stepping forward. Suntouch trying to do what he can against the Titan, and a brief moment of excitement as Torpedo almost defend. But unfortunately for them, Dignitas wind up on top.
Dignitas getting the first game of the set, sitting at 11-10, that much closer to Hungary for more. These standings are getting really close.
I mean, Europe has been extremely exciting the past couple of weeks. Coming into it, I think there was, all right, well, Panthera's on top, and whatever team you decided to dislike at the moment was on the bottom. It was very easy to see that things were a little bit disjointed. But as we've come on, we're in week number 8. It's anything but. Everybody's very, very close together. And ShadowNightmare actually capitalized off of the closeness of some of the opponents. We see the first blood go in the way of the mid-mage on Zeus, and a lot of that had to do with the positioning of the enemy.
Yeah, the Nemesis was on the side, baited out the Sobek pluck, and recognizing that comes the Divine Judgment, the Zeus ultimate as well. Nowhere for the Sobek to go. Utilizing the strategy is what Dignitas did to their favor.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun watching the. We know that you're going to pluck, and then it's all about the response and the return kills that was coming out. And that kind of was just a jam from Shadow the entire game. Finding kills either with the ultimate as he plops it down, then changing targets to look at 1, and then 2, just escaping thanks to the teammates.
We talked about the Nemesis-Zeus combination. Whoever is getting hit by the Nemesis is getting hit by the Zeus as well. We saw that earlier with the Sobek, and every single kill from ShadowNightmare has been complemented with the Nemesis as well.
That mid-jungle bond. I don't know how many times. This is the true meta of what Smite is at in Season 3. It's just a combination jungle and mid lane.
Yeah, so much damage from ShadowNightmare with the red buff. He was higher level because of the early aggression that they had. FrostiaK setting him up really nicely that game.
Worked out.